last point we make is the concern here is paper ballot custody. Because if people had voted up to that point, bomb threats come in, polls close, then you're technically breaking the chain of custody for the paper votes. And legally speaking, if there was a recount, then there's a argument of saying, hey, because there was a break in chain of custody, can we truly trust those paper votes are correct? Which was a concern.
So there is, with the bomb threat thing, there is literally 7 things you could do
100%.
to totally fuck with the vote.
Opportunities.
People don't show up. You got people that you close the polling place, which, by the way, even if it closes for a little while, that's how many people didn't get to vote, which also limits the vote. Then you got, let me finish, and then you have what you just said. So when you say break the chain, that people, so they have to clear everybody out. They have to clear everybody out because of a bomb threat.
Do we know
so now the ballots are there.
An example of that is breaking that chain of custody?
Yes. So the way our election system works is you take account. You track, legally speaking, votes cast, secure them, who transferred them where are they at? And so you close down the polling locations. Who's then accountable for those paper votes that have already been cast?
Who's guarding the votes?
Right. Who's guarding the votes? And it's generally like the poll workers that are volunteered there or working there. And we don't want to get into some of the other concerns, but if you were to have focused on multiple ways to influence an election, poll workers is a really good way of potentially having opportunities. You've got as well disenfranchising voters. And so there has been some things come out in concerns to a more organized attempt to get people engaged in being poll voters.
All that aside, because I like that we get into the minutia, but all that aside, 200 bomb threats when we've never had that in an election, and we've got, like, this guy's a 34-time convicted felon who's up for doing any con to win. It's just the 200 bomb threats alone is such a wait, what?
And this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Well,
keep going.
so do you remember though that you kind of just addressed this a little bit, but after the 2020 election, one of the biggest movements of those fringy groups like the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio specifically sent out emails calling for people to go and get low-level government jobs or volunteer to work at election centers.
So if you got a bunch of Proud Boys being poll workers, bomb threat gets called in, those guys get cleared out, whoever has to watch the votes.
Cowboys for Trump guy, remember?
Oh my God.
He was the one that he actually was on the election board.
Right. So this is all, okay, I get it.
That's New Mexico.
But again, that comes to what's possible. 200 bomb threats happened. That's crazy.
Documented. And over 200. We correlated 200 at least, and that's on here.
All right, keep going. Tell us what's going on.
The main concern here is,
right now. I'm furious at this point.
The final point we want to make is this is a concern because it shows a potential organized effort against our elections.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is what it would take, the beginning of what it would take.
That's right. There's no way a bunch of randos on the same day called in. There's
organized is the key word here.
Someone figured this out. Right.
Yes. So that is one of just a few things that concerned us. Here's what I feel like a lot of people are concerned about is 7 swing states for one candidate. When was the last time and what does that even look like for most people?
And Nevada was the first red flag on this, right?
Nevada they have 2 very large counties. That's where a vast majority of their voters are.
Right.
And those, and they normally are very more liberal as it's added out. So they did swing red this time around. And then we actually looked at Nevada. But when it comes to when was the last time someone did something like this, as you said, 1984, Ronald Reagan. The swing states were slightly different then, but he won 49 out of the 50 states.
Right.
And what's important here is he won with a super majority of the votes of the locations. And even then, as we'll highlight in a following slide, we look at the actual counties that are won per state and see where those don't add up either.
How old are you, by the way? May I ask?
I'm 26.
Okay, so just so you know, I was alive during this, and I remember when this happened. The reason that Reagan destroyed Jimmy Carter came across as kind of a nebbishy kind of, we all know that Carter ended up being the best humanitarian, probably like Mother Teresa level, right? But I remember at the time we were demoralized. The helicopter crash when he tried to get the hostages out, all that stuff. And I remember Reagan was like, well, we're gonna go in and and he was just, we needed Reagan at that time because we had been demoralized.
Mhm.
I remember Reagan winning. No one had a question why he won. So keep going. Go ahead.
So from 24 to 20. So 20 is the first and you see it shift. I want to highlight this because to win a state, you must win a majority of the votes
Right.
across the counties. You win the counties generally. And so what we see is in the 24 election
Wow.
for the Republican candidate for president, they flipped 88 counties to their party this time around, and the Democrats flipped 0.
Wow.
0 counties. And you see it all across the country. It's not just in the swing
Yeah.
states. This is a concern because
It's impossible.
the last, like, even when in 1984, right, Ronald Reagan, landslide victory,
Mhm.
Mondale still flipped 30 counties blue. And this was nowhere close to that level. And 0 counties flipped to the Democrats is a concern.
Wow.
And
Has someone done a statistical analyzation of that? Like, what would that be? What are the odds this happened?
so what is exceedingly frustrating about statistics is when it comes down to odds, elections are vague because people will argue until the ends of the earth. You can and cannot do certain statistical things with elections. They'll say, hey, you can't add 7 swing states as a flip of the coin analysis because voting is more dynamic than that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there is no level of math that would argue this isn't a concern and this does need to be investigated because it's improbable this would happen naturally.
Now, let me
It points at a bigger issue.
Let me add the humanity part of it. This is also wasn't some crazy badass like Obama figure that came
Right.
in and we knew that he was just the best.
Right.
He's going to flip 80. This was a guy who literally had just got out of court. The only reason he avoided going to jail was because he won the presidency. So this was a guy who we saw be a scumbag over and over. He actually, 1 million died on his watch last time. This guy does not have, again, couldn't sell water, steak, and vodka.
The guy who had already lost.
The guy who already lost the election before. So for that guy to come in after what he did with COVID, after destroying the economy, after bankrupting farmers, to come in and flip 88 counties is literally insane.
And the
That would
last time
mean-
that was done was almost 100 years ago, and it was FDR.
It would also mean that everybody had the bird flu and were crazed. That's what it would mean. The only way that happens is if we all had the bird flu, we all got insane, and we voted. And so this is impossible. I will call this is impossible to happen.
And the reason why we highlight this is because when you start putting all of these pieces together, this is what kickstarted us making the Election True Alliance. This is what kickstarted us investigating elections and saying, hey, if the government's not going to actually check on this and make sure this is,
Right.
correct,
We have to start making
and,
noise.
and validate our elections, right? Then someone's got to do it. And I guess it's going to have to be us. And I guess it's going to be, a third party, non-partisan, independent organization because there's nothing like,
Yeah.
no one's out here really digging into this and making it well known.
And do you guys understand, everybody listening and watching, that Reagan, the white Jesus to the Republican Party, Reagan won 49 of 50 states, and still Mondale flipped 30 counties blue.
And Kamala Harris, the first, just women alone.
Yeah.
Also, we've also got women getting all the rights taken away, and we have a woman like Morty president. Like it's going to be history making, and for some reason we didn't flip one
county,
not
one.
fucking one.
Not
So that makes zero
Yep.
sense.
Yep. And so this is where we said what could have caused this, right?
Okay, all right.
And this is where we begun to publish our concerns. And so we said, and actually right off the bat, right after the election, a few days, I think less than 7 days, Stephen Spoonamore, a notable cybersecurity expert in, I believe, Ohio, he put out a duty to warn letter, and he said this. He said, I have concerns. I've seen something like this before in Ohio, 2004. He was looking at election fraud then. He said, I have concerns that this could have been a compromise of a tabulation, our tabulation system, and a potential vote change or vote addition or whatever's going on. And he published that. He put his name on it. He was the first one to do this. and he said, this needs to be looked at. And he gave us some numbers. He started talking about what was at the time called bullet ballots. I don't know if you've heard anything about bullet ballots.
So bullet ballots is when someone votes for just the president and that's it.
So in that case, yes, what you're looking at is you're looking at a vote for the one party presidential, and then it doesn't match any down ballot candidates. It's just it's a free vote.
Even on the ballot, if they voted, they would vote like a Republican president, all Democrats. Like it doesn't match.
In the case of a bullet ballot, it's just the president. You didn't vote anything else.
Nothing else.
Nothing else.
So what's the percentage normally of that over the years?
So we did a little bit of math in the beginning. Generally speaking, it's not a lot. It's some places like the Democrats specifically, it's always less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Yeah. For the Republicans, it's a little higher, actually. I think they had a couple more, 1 to 2%. But at the end of the day, this was the beginning of looking into this. And so he said, hey, bullet ballots could be people adding votes. And it would correlate, right? Because you'd add in a vote for, say, right? Let's say you've compromised the tabulation systems. Everyone's voted, and then you vote extra. You put extra just presidential votes on top at the end, and that pushes someone up.
So you're telling me, so let's say you write an algorithm for the programming that basically what it does is at a certain number of votes, it actually starts adding bullet ballots.
So this is
possible.
This is separate to what we're doing. We're highlighting what the initial concerns were.
Right. I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying that's what the concerns are.
That was the concern. Is you would have wrote an algorithm
See
that
how
added
I'm trying
votes
to
in.
avoid the lawsuits, guys.